My guest today is Adam Wilkinson, a partner at Shillings, the London firm working at the intersection of security, reputation, and geopolitics. His work takes him to some of the most challenging jurisdictions on earth, normally Africa or the Americas, helping governments, high net worth individuals, and major businesses when things go wrong. And that could be things like assets seized or people put on wanted lists or security and privacy under attack. Before Shillings, he spent 7 years in RAF, including a stint in Helmand. So I wanted to add him on today because he sits in exactly where like international politics meets personal security, and very few people do this specific work. So Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you to be here.
You did your MBA at Henley while serving in the RAF. What was it about like commercial advisory work specifically that pulled you out of the military?
I don't know if I was pulled out of the military. I suppose my whole career and life to an extent has been a series of accidents and steps that I hadn't really planned for at the time. So I mean, I think I've had a great time and I've been lucky to do everything that I've done. But I didn't plan to be in the military, and I barely planned to leave. I think ultimately I've done everything I wanted to do. I'd been at the top of the operational portion of my career. I'd been to Afghanistan, and I'd done what I could do, which was going to be interesting. The next 30 plus years was looking like leadership roles or sort of non-operational administrative roles, trying to fight my way to the top in the military. And I knew it was time to go. I was lucky as I left, as I was about to leave Afghanistan, then boss phoned me and he said, you know about drones, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, I've seen the drones. Yeah, I've seen the drones. And he said, well, I've got a brilliant job for you when you get back. So I said, okay, fine. I mean, credit to him, it was a great job, and it sort of set off the rest of my career, I think, because I was thrown still then a young man. I was thrown into a very large defense project with 6 different international defense contractors, different services, government, seeing how they all work together, sometimes didn't work together, often worked slightly against each other's interests. It was interesting. I thought, wow, there is definitely interesting things going on which affect the world that we read about in the news and what we see and how it goes on behind the scenes, something I'd like to be involved in. I think most of my career has been putting my hand up and doing things other people didn't want to do. So I did an MBA, and because I thought that would give me a leg up in terms of getting a job, which it did, and I'm still here nearly 12 years later.
Jumping into just more of the work you do now then. When you land in a jurisdiction and say a client's mine or a factory has been seized, what is, when your first boots on the ground, what is the first thing that tells you whether this is something that's political or commercial?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I do most of my work in my personal work, which is distinct from the firm's work, maybe. Most of it is in sub-Saharan Africa, the Americas, Middle East, Asia. So, but I would apply this in the UK and Europe to a large degree, I think. I'm going to assume that if the asset we're talking about is valuable, if there is a community or a large amount of people employed by this asset, i.e. it's politically sensitive, if someone's wealthy because of it, I'm going to assume that it's both commercial and political. I mean, we're a law firm. I don't know, 90% of our clients, or 90% plus, are not disputes between 2 state-owned entities or 2 governments, and we're not doing arbitrations. Most of it involves a commercial body. It doesn't have to be big P political. Sometimes it's hyper-local, in fact. I mean, we had an issue recently in East Africa. The chief of police and one of the local courts was essentially providing court orders and security for one company to very forcibly and violently seize the assets of another company in what was a completely commercial dispute. But I mean, we had our own team intercepted, very politely intercepted, but at gunpoint ultimately by an army unit who should have nothing to do whatsoever with some private people driving around lawfully with a visa. That's hyperlocal. It goes all the way up sometimes to, it's a piece of critical national infrastructure and the cabinet are looking at it. But the first thing on the ground which tells us, aside from the fact I'm going to assume there is political issues because of where we are, is, sometimes when we're getting visas, the people who are sponsoring our visas are either asked to tell us that our visit has been inquired about, or they tell us when they're not necessarily meant to, that someone has asked us from the intelligence services or whoever else, why are Shillings coming here? What's this about? Sometimes at the border, it becomes quite apparent that there is more interest than there should be in some business people coming into the country. That might be questioning or, administrative delays. We see it in the media often. Who owns this newspaper and why are they reporting on this case in this way? How do they have that piece of information which should be entirely confidential? How has the media got it? Why are they attacking our client when otherwise they should be aligned to them? So you see it sometimes through that. And then I'd say the it's not necessarily you see it, but you feel it in 20%, maybe more of cases. We're sitting across the table from the other side, and the person who is the face of the dispute, but you can get a sense fairly quickly that they're not the actual decision maker, even though they should be able to give you their word on what they'll accept and how this is going to go. You can get a sense quite quickly that actually they have to refer it back to someone else. Sadly, don't always or often get total clarity, but you feel it in various ways, I think.
So at that sort of level, there's always an undertone of political, I would say, influence, or just like an element of it that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Which, you're right, that does lead me perfectly on to the next question, which was, tell me a time early on where you misjudged the politics of the specific jurisdiction, or generally just the politics of that case that you're working on, how you misjudged it, and then how you've learned from that, and you sort of understand now how these conflicts actually are resolved.
Well, I'm going to say with great confidence, I never misjudge the politics of anything. Obviously, I always execute brilliantly. Obviously. So the thing about politics and law and life, communications, anything is it's always changing. So often we will have made our determination, which we think based on all the available facts and what we may know about of the personalities, we think is a pretty good one. But 2 weeks in, the facts are all going to change. So we've got to keep. You're always behind the facts ultimately, and people are changing their opinions and they're reacting to what you do. So, we don't always adapt as quickly as we want to do because the other side are also very good at getting their aims, right? So it's a constant battle. I think what taught me the most was when I was quite early on in this job. We were doing a very large case. I won't name the case. It involved 20 jurisdictions easily. I was regularly transiting through somewhere in Asia. It's a transit hub, but it also was relevant to this case. And I don't know how this place has a reputation in the region and internationally for being, for probity, for the rule of law, for being a place where you can do good lawful business and make money, and the top companies are located, and bad actors don't do well there. It was a criminal and commercial case, but there's no criminal case in this jurisdiction. It was a commercial issue, but it was embarrassing for lots of governments and lots of regulators because big international media was saying that all these people had been asleep at the wheel, essentially. So there was obviously a reputation angle and maybe some other things going on behind the scenes. And I don't know how they picked the unlucky person here. I don't know if it was seat number or random chance or just a bad day for that person. And it wasn't they didn't pick the person who had the most information or is the most important on the case. But the team went into this jurisdiction. One person was invited for further interview, didn't leave a cell at the airport for 2 days until everyone else had got back to the airport. So, I mean, other than it being very unpleasant, we didn't really learn ever what was behind it either. But I think I learned early on never to underestimate how a commercial dispute might have ramifications on a government or a politician or someone who knows someone powerful enough to take action. And that doesn't just extend to the client, it might extend to their advisors like us. And we need to always anticipate how the other sides of our cases might try and use leverage and influence and scare people or gain information or grab you at the border and take your devices. All those things we've got to try and anticipate the whole time now. I'm probably more extreme on that. And actually, my wife tells me often that I'm too extreme on that sort of thing when we go on a family holiday. But I've lived it and learnt it. I think it taught me to be careful. It's better to be careful and not get caught out than to get caught out.
Yeah. It gave you a flavour for it and some rightly in tuned professional paranoia in the right place. Yeah.
And luckily it wasn't me, so I had a very nice time.
Yeah. Sort of pivoting, but in the same vein, just talking about where intelligence can come from. Is there a time, or how often does it happen, where you're in a situation with a client, assessing a threat, and the actual information is sitting in the public domain where essentially anyone can see it if they wanted to or motivated to?
I'm going to answer on as the the firm that I work for, because I think it's more apparent with their work. I mean, it's actually astounding to me. I'm not a technical investigative professional, so I'm essentially I deal with the work product that the investigative professionals will find and give me, or that people on the other side of our cases have found. So it's astounding to me that even people who really take their privacy seriously and have done so, maybe even since the sort of early internet age, how much is still out there. And there is a sort of a need, I think, for people to be able to be private, certainly financially and in terms of their family. But very little is private. And that is when I'm talking about information that has been obtained lawfully, just because, as you say, you've left it on the internet. If you then add into what's been breached and is available sitting on forums on the dark web, which is reasonably easily checkable, even for a complete layperson, it's astounding. I mean, we're dealing with clients every day who've got big profiles and may have something to lose or may be under threat, and maybe their home address isn't there. But we had a case where it was actually a stalker. This is quite a low level thing, but you can imagine it's the stalker of a celebrity. If you then transplant the determination of this person onto, if someone has £50 billion in the bank and you want to get to them, then you can see how easily people can be motivated. This stalker, who had mental health issues, had read in a magazine interview that this celebrity had given that they had just moved to, and they gave like a pretty broad area in London. They gave a pretty broad area. And they love to go for a coffee, and just walk around the area. So this stalker who'd come from another country, we said to the client, we're pretty sure they're where you are. They'd read in a magazine, which was online. They lived in this area and they like to go for a coffee. This stalker had spent 3 weeks living on the streets, going around the coffee shops. So, you waiting at coffee shops in the morning. So you transpose what you can easily find online or read into people taking real life, human intelligence steps this person did. And they eventually found the celebrity, tracked them down to their door. Police had to be called, etc., etc. This is not a professional. So if you have professional investigators or criminals, essentially, and criminals, I would say, are typically fantastic at what they do. They're just doing it in a different way to, lawful professionals. Mm. And in many senses, they're at the cutting edge. You've got to be extremely lucky and extremely careful to keep yourself completely contained information-wise. I think we're almost through the age of being able to hide. You've got to take more direct steps to protect yourself and your information and to wall things off. You can't just expect to hide online anymore.
Yeah, I don't think enough people realize, but how much information, like the dangers of how much data is available about us online. Like you rightly say, there's obviously like the cleared net, and then there's the data breach stuff, and then there's also the stuff behind login gates that people can get access to, which they shouldn't have. Talking about threats, again, how much or how consistently do you see threats coming from a person's inner circle opposed to an outer circle?
I would say that on balance, in the cases I deal with, that the main threat is in my cases and in those countries is an external party. So it is a government or a commercial competitor, and they do want to take your assets, be that a mine or a bank account or whatever it is. But they may well try to co-opt pressure, put under duress, whatever else, one of your inner circle. And it's not that hard to do with either money, or if you have the machinery of the state behind you, and the sort of limitless threat of violence essentially against people or their family. It's not very difficult to do. So we see attempts at it all the time. I would say though that those are in the probably 25%. That's 75% of the time. It's an external party, and they may try and co-opt someone. I mean, we had a case recently with a financial institution. They had their data had been, or their trades had been compromised. People on the other side seemed to know things about them that barely they themselves knew. Big plans to do investigations and sue lots of people and go to court and get disclosure. This is in a Western jurisdiction, so where those tools are potentially more effective. But we said, have you done a review of your office? i.e., is there any technical means why this data has been compromised? Oh, yes. We've got an IT person, and we do regular bug sweeps and da da da. Long story short, the CEO's computer itself was compromised. So every email this person had been sending for possibly years, actually completely unrelated to the party they thought was on the other side. Every email had been going to an address in Eastern Europe, being forwarded on for a number of years. So it wasn't even the adversary they thought it was that was doing it. It was just crime, possibly state-sponsored, probably not state-sponsored, general crime. This person is only well known enough to be on a very big, long list of possible targets. They're not a sort of well-known person anyway. But once an attacker realizes what they've got, in this case, it was an insider threat that had allowed them to almost take this very large fund down. Yeah. So you got to be careful.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting sort of way you frame that, because the inside threat has many different faces to it. It's very, very different ways in which that can happen. If we're taking a bird's eye view at your role, your industry, what's the biggest constraint that you see at the moment? And if you could solve it, would unlock the most for you?
I mean, in the courts and in politics and in business and life in general is a big problem for the cases we're on. Obviously, we're regulated firms. We can't be involved in that, and yet in many cases, adversaries our clients face can be involved in that and use it, in the courts and wherever else against us. So that is a problem, but that's been a problem since the dawn of human history, right? Yeah. So I don't think we're going to solve that one. I think, and this is a bit of a personal. There's a bit of push and pull, because I believe in the right to personal, individual, financial, corporate privacy to a large degree, as long as it's in accordance with the law and the relevant authorities can understand what's going on. But there's obviously, and we've had voluminous news reporting on it over the years, some of which I think has been brilliant, some of which I think is just uses words like offshore and shell company to describe perfectly legal and sensible and normal activities. But I think between what's perfectly legal and what I see on the happening to our clients, there is an element of shady nominees, professional advisors providing cover and services that they shouldn't do in certain jurisdictions, allowing privacy which is not even overseen or sort of penetrated by the government, acting in as they should to allow bad actors to do whatever they want, disguise who's controlling things, move money around. So from a personal level, I sort of believe in privacy, but obviously as someone who wants to understand exactly what the other side's doing, what assets they've got, what leverage I could have and win, it's sometimes inconvenient, right?
Yeah. It's obviously probably an insolvable problem, I would definitely say, and everyone would agree, but double-edged sword, as you say.
Yeah.
Another a big obvious change that everyone talks about, and it's almost sort of gross to even mention the word, but AI is obviously moving very fast and changing industries, specifically with security and reputation advisory. Where do you see the industry and your job role moving forward, where a human is always going to be relevant?
I do a really weird job, so that is probably helpful for me. But then again, people who were selling square wheels thought this round wheel is going to be useless. It's never going to work, right? So I could be wrong. But I think in terms of the industry, we are all going to have to focus a lot more on what we do with the information and how we use it rather than collecting the information, because I think a lot of the collect is going to be increasingly automated. So collect is going to become less of a premium product. I'm sure there'll still be some niche services, but collect is I think a computer's going to do it, although I'm maybe more on the AI doomster side than some others. So I think how people adapt to what they're going to do with their products, how it's going to help clients in a different way, how not just presenting the information, but what you're going to do with it. What does this mean? What are the recommendations? For me personally, most of my job is talking to people that I know or that I know the right person, once removed, as opposed to I know a guy down the pub 3 times removed and he can speak to the president. Most of my personal job is about knowing the right person, the right advisor to solve this problem in this quite niche place. So I'm being very blasé. I don't think the AI is going to do that, because especially when you're dealing with dispute, which goes beyond the court and goes into politics and like this person's motivation, which might be taking the factory, but actually it's controlling all of the mines in Eastern country X, so you can control the supply chain of whatever else and sell it to whichever country. I'm being deliberately circumspect. You see what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
I think people's motivations in the business we're in often go way beyond, and that's not mean to say you couldn't ask AI a computer about it, but AI is not going to be able to have the conversation with this person about one dispute, knowing full well that actually they've got a much bigger plan, and how are we going to factor that in, how are we going to actually solve our client come out of it with what we want. I'm not that worried about the computer taking this part of our industry's job, because we're going to have to still have people speaking to people, because AI is very good. I think if you've got two court orders and you want to compare them, and I'm sure it can tell you about all the game theory, but it's not going to have the conversation with the sometimes deeply unpleasant and irrational person on the other side and hammer out a deal with them. Because when the AI says you should make sure you get this in writing in a contract, well, that's not going to happen here. We're going to have to do it, in a different way.
Yeah, there's a big difference between obviously like data and intelligence. So like all the manual hard labor work, and yeah, for sure. But like the false positives are real, and there's I don't see that fully ever being solved. So
do you see those in your? You're meant to be asking me questions, but I'm going to ask you one.
Go ahead.
I'm aware of your business. Do you see false positives that you have to weed out in what you do?
All the time.
Really?
The time. Yeah. Like they get better, and like you can prompt it to sort of like self-regulate against false positives, but like it's a long way off just click and go. Do you know what I mean? Like you can add more data sources, more APIs, and enrich data as much as possible, and it is really good. But nah, I don't see it really fully just yet. Like I had a case where it was like a vibe coder created like a scam website. And it was a bit technically out of my depth. So I was asking AI, and then I took it to someone who actually was like a pen tester, and he was like, no. He was like, that's not right. That's not right. And I was fully going along with it because it was just like a bit out of my realm. And that
the AI had advised on it.
Yeah, just on like the technical aspects of like pulling the website apart and then looking at like the metadata within that site. And so yeah, that was an eye opener for me, because I put it into use of something I wasn't actually.
Well, and you're right as well, because the other thing is people just go, you get AI says it, you just go along with it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right, well that must be it.
Yeah, well, I almost did, to be fair, because like I had to outsource a bit of it, and I was like, it'd save me money if I just put that forward.
Yeah.
But no. The false positives are real, and the insights at the end of it are real. But yeah, Adam, last question, which is obviously if you want anyone to touch base with you, where is or a project that you're working on, you want to let them know, or just a general public safety announcement if you have one.
I mean, if you want, for years, because I was working on, amongst other things, blackmails and extortions and kidnapping cases and dealing with some sometimes unpleasant people, I didn't have a photo on the Shillings partners websites. Now we have a new website, and it was strongly suggested to me that I should have a photo on it. So unfortunately, you can find me on that website with my photo. I can't really talk about any projects, so thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Adam, again, thank you very much for squeezing me in between meetings and travel. Really good, interesting conversation. You're quite good at communicating. It's very like tactical and complex issues that we spoke about there, but you communicate in a very succinct way. And I think your approach at business, and I guess life, is sort of almost a bit like stoic, philosophical, where you just roll with it. Particularly talking about RAF into commercial, and then when we just spoke about the AI.
I always say yes, though. I always say I'm going to do it. That's the thing. Like, even if that's why I would say to young people trying to get into the industry, you gotta say yeah. You gotta do things which seem hard or impossible and work it out. Yeah. Otherwise, how do you differentiate yourself?
100%. I can see the proof is in the pudding. But appreciate your time, Adam. All the best. Hope you touch base again in the future.
Thank you. Take care.